Afolabi walked through the bustling village market, his eyes scanning the vibrant stalls lined with fabrics, spices, and handcrafted ornaments. The scent of roasting plantains mixed with the earthy aroma of the red soil, but his mind was elsewhere. His wife Nkem had once been the center of his world, her laughter, the melody of his home. Yet, something had shifted. Their conversations had become routine, their nights predictable. 10 years of marriage had dulled the excitement that once set his soul ablaze. He loved Nkem, but lately he had been craving something more. He convinced himself it was just restlessness, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. But that was before he saw her. Zainab stood by a merchant's stall, her fingers trailing over a golden bangle. Her beauty was unlike any Afolabi had seen before. Skin like polished mahogany, eyes that held stories untold. She exuded an aura of quiet confidence, a mystery wrapped in silk. When she lifted her gaze and met his, something in him shifted. "Are you a man who admires gold or the hands that wear them?" she asked, a playful smirk on her lips. Afolabi chuckled, caught off guard by her boldness. "Perhaps both," he replied. Their exchange was brief, a handful of words and a lingering glance. But it was enough. Enough to plant a seed of curiosity that took root in his mind. That night, as he lay beside Nkem, the warmth of her body familiar yet distant, his thoughts strayed to Zainab. Days turned into weeks, and their encounters became frequent. Afolabi told himself it was coincidence at first, happening upon her at the market, their conversations innocent. But deep down he knew better. He sought her out, drawn to the way she spoke, the way she made him feel seen in a way he hadn't in years. Nkem noticed the change. The absences, the quiet moments when he seemed lost in thought. He had always been a devoted husband, present in their marriage, but now there was a distance, a subtle shift she couldn't ignore. One evening, as Afolabi returned home later than usual, she met him at the door, her eyes searching his. "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice steady, but laced with something fragile. He hesitated for a moment before forcing a smile. "Trade discussions ran late," he said. Nkem nodded, but the flicker of doubt in her eyes told him she didn't believe him. As he lay in bed that night, he knew he was at the edge of something dangerous. One step further, and there would be no turning back. Yet, the thrill of it called to him, louder than the voice of reason. Afolabi no longer fought the pull. He found himself waiting for moments to see Zainab, his heart pounding like a young man chasing his first love. Their meetings became more than just stolen glances. They were hushed conversations in the shade of mango trees, fingers grazing in fleeting touches, a game of temptation neither wanted to end. Zainab was unlike Nkem. She was fire where his wife was calm waters, mystery where Nkem was familiarity. With her he felt alive, reckless, untamed. She spoke in riddles, laughed like she carried no burdens, and looked at him like he was the only man in the world. It was intoxicating. A tea home. The guilt gnawed at him, but it never stopped him. He convinced himself no harm was done. He was only indulging in stolen moments, nothing more. But Nkem was not blind. She saw the shift in his touch, the distance in his gaze, the way he seemed to exist in a world she was no longer part of. She watched him one evening as he sat outside, staring at the night sky, lost in thoughts she knew weren't of her. "A man who wanders too far from home forgets the way back," she said softly, her voice heavy with meaning. Afolabi stiffened but said nothing. What could he say? That he had already forgotten? The village had started to whisper. Women exchanged knowing looks, elders shook their heads. It was never loud, never direct, but it was there. A murmur that grew with each passing day. Afolabi ignored it. He told himself they knew nothing, that it was just talk. Then came the night that changed everything. Nkem had always been patient, always believed that love could weather any storm. But love should never beg, never chase, never be made to feel like an afterthought. She followed him as he left their home under the excuse of trade matters. Her heart pounded, praying she was wrong, that she would find him alone, that this was all in her head. But what she found shattered her. There, under the moon's silver glow, was Afolabi with Zainab. Not in conversation, not in innocent laughter, but in an embrace that spoke of a bond long forged. His hands on her waist, his lips near her ear, their bodies close as if the world around them had ceased to exist. Nkem felt the air leave her lungs. The man she had given her life to, the father of her children, had become a stranger before her eyes. She turned away before her grief could betray her presence. Some wounds deserved to be carried in silence, at least for now. Nkem did not confront him that night. Some betrayals were too deep for words, too painful for immediate reaction. Instead, she sought counsel from the village elder, a woman whose wisdom had guided many before her. The old woman listened without interruption, her face unreadable. When Nkem finished, she spoke only one sentence. "A river that leaves its banks will one day drown in the ocean." The meaning was clear. Afolabi had already lost his way, but the tide of his actions would soon pull him under. Nkem made her decision. She would not beg, not cry, not fight for a man who had already chosen to leave her in his heart. But she would not walk away in silence either. Days passed, and Afolabi continued his charade, believing his secret remained hidden. He had convinced himself that Nkem's quiet nature meant she suspected nothing. But the truth has a way of revealing itself when least expected. Zainab was not the woman he thought she was. One evening, she appeared at his home, her expression unreadable. Nkem watched from the doorway as Afolabi stepped outside, confusion evident on his face. "You were never mine to keep," Zainab said, her voice devoid of the warmth he had grown addicted to. "I only wanted to see if I could take what belonged to another." Afolabi's stomach turned. The woman he had risked everything for had only been playing a game. He opened his mouth to speak, but she was already walking away, her purpose fulfilled, her interest in him gone. When he turned, he saw Nkem standing there, calm but distant. She did not yell, did not ask why, did not demand explanations. She only looked at him with an emptiness that unsettled him more than any rage ever could. "I know," she said simply. The weight of his actions crushed him. He wanted to explain, to justify, to reach for the life he had so carelessly discarded. But it was too late. Some wounds do not heal with words. Days later, Nkem left with their children, her dignity intact, her love unbroken but no longer his to claim. The village did not speak ill of her. They only looked at Afolabi with quiet disappointment, the kind that lingers longer than any spoken judgment. He had thought he was chasing passion, excitement, something new. Instead, he had lost everything. And in the silence of his empty home, he finally understood the elder's words, that a river that betrays its banks will always be swallowed by the sea.